There is a math problem hiding in plain sight. Right now, in May 2026, 5 specific industries are consuming silver faster than the world can mine it. The deficit is in its 6th consecutive year. The cumulative shortage since 2021 is approximately 820 million ounces, and that is roughly equivalent to the entire annual global silver mine production. The Silver Institute, the industry's own primary data source, projects that the cumulative deficit between 2021 and 2030 could exceed 1.5 billion ounces. Renewable energy demand alone could reach 510 million ounces by 2030. 5 industries are doing this. Most market commentary covers maybe one of them. None cover all 5 together. And once you see how they stack and how mine supply isn't keeping up, the math becomes structurally unsustainable. Here are the 5. The numbers, what's driving each one, and what the Silver Institute's own data says happens by 2030. Quick note before we dive in, nothing on this channel is financial advice. We're covering the data, the history, and the news. Everything you watch is for educational purposes only. With that said, here we go. Before we get to the 5 industries, we have to talk about what makes the math work and what makes it break. Global silver mine production in 2025 was approximately 835 million ounces. That's roughly 26,000 metric tons. It is, importantly, about 7% below the 2016 peak. Silver mine production has been declining or flat for nearly a decade despite the silver price tripling over that same period. The reason this seems counterintuitive, but matters, is that 72% of all silver produced globally comes as a byproduct of copper, lead, and zinc mining. It is not the primary product. Silver miners cannot simply ramp up production when the silver price rises, because most silver is dragged out of the ground based on whether copper or zinc demand justifies the mine. That means silver supply does not respond elastically to price. The top 3 producing countries are Mexico, which alone accounts for roughly 202 million ounces a year, China, with about 106 million, Peru, with approximately 100. After those 3, production is spread across Chile, Australia, Poland, Bolivia, and Russia. On the supply side, the other component is recycling. Recycled silver in 2025 was approximately 194 million ounces, a 12-year high, driven primarily by industrial recovery and end-of-life solar panel recycling beginning to scale. Add those together. Total silver supply for 2026 is forecast at 1.05 billion ounces by the Silver Institute. That is a decade high. It is also still less than total demand. That is the math problem. Let's now look at the 5 industries on the other side of the equation. Industry number 1, solar photovoltaic manufacturing. Solar panels use silver because silver is the highest conductivity metal available at scale. Every standard solar cell has thin lines of silver paste printed across the surface that carry the electrical current generated by the photovoltaic effect. Without silver, modern solar panels do not work, at least not at the efficiency levels the global energy transition assumes. In 2024, solar PV consumed 197.6 million ounces of silver, a record year. In 2025, that number softened slightly to around 180 million ounces, primarily because Chinese manufacturers, facing margin pressure from silver costs, accelerated efforts to reduce silver loading per cell. This is called thrifting. Here is where most analysts get the story wrong. The dominant narrative on silver and solar is, quote, solar manufacturers will thrift their way out of dependence on silver. That narrative is mathematically incorrect. Yes, individual cells today use less silver than they did 5 years ago, but the technology mix is shifting toward higher efficiency cells called TOPCon and HJT, and toward back contact or BC modules. TOPCon cells use approximately 50% more silver per cell than the older PERC cells they replace. HJT cells use even more. BC modules, the next step up, use approximately 110 to 120 milligrams of silver per cell. So the cell-level thrifting is real. The technology mix shift, however, is silver positive. Net. This is why the Silver Institute and Bloomberg NEF both forecast solar PV silver demand to roughly double by 2030. The most rigorous academic source, a peer-reviewed paper by Cataneo and colleagues, published in the journal Resources Conservation and Recycling in September 2025, forecasts solar PV silver demand reaching 322 to 450 million ounces by 2030. That is 1.6 to 2.3 times current consumption. The Silver Institute's broader renewable energy basket, which captures solar plus related applications, could reach 510 million ounces by 2030. To put that in scale, 510 million ounces is more than 60% of total global silver mine production. Industry number 2, electronics and the AI infrastructure build-out. This is the single largest industrial silver demand bucket. In 2025, the Silver Institute's electrical and electronics category consumed approximately 461 million ounces of silver. That's 70% of all industrial silver demand. The category includes everything from consumer electronics, smartphones, laptops, televisions, to industrial process automation, to telecommunications infrastructure. What's changing the trajectory is what gets built into the AI data center build-out. Modern hyperscale data centers use silver throughout their physical architecture. Server motherboards typically contain 2 to 5 grams of silver in their printed circuit boards. The high-frequency optical interconnects that move data between servers contain silver. The cooling and power distribution systems contain silver-brazed joints. The fiber-to-electrical conversion modules, what they're called optical transceivers, contain silver in their high-frequency contacts. One important caveat, and this is where most market commentary gets sloppy. You will see analysts claim that, quote, a single hyperscale data center consumes 300 metric tons, or 9.6 million ounces of silver. That number is technically defensible, but it includes the dedicated solar generation built to power the data center. The actual data hall, the building full of servers, uses a much smaller fraction of that. If you also count silver going into solar in the solar segment, you double count. So the responsible analyst framing is this. AI infrastructure adds an estimated 20 to 50 million ounces of additional annual silver demand by 2030, beyond what consumer electronics already requires. Goldman Sachs has forecast that total data center power demand will increase 165% by 2030. So combine the existing 461 million ounces of electrical and electronics consumption with the structural growth from AI infrastructure, fifth-generation wireless rollout, and global electrification, and the total category likely reaches between 550 and 650 million ounces by 2030. That alone is approaching the entire current global mine supply. Industry number 3, electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure they require. Every internal combustion vehicle today contains between 15 and 28 grams of silver, used in switches, sensors, electrical contacts, and various small assemblies. Hybrid vehicles use somewhere between 18 and 34 grams. Battery electric vehicles, full BEVs, use between 25 and 50 grams per vehicle. The Silver Institute's most recent forecast estimates that electric vehicles will overtake internal combustion vehicles as the dominant per-vehicle silver consumer somewhere around 2027. In 2025, total automotive silver consumption, across all vehicle types, was approximately 80 to 90 million ounces a year. Oxford Economics, in a report commissioned by the Silver Institute, projects that figure growing at a compound annual rate of approximately 3.4% through 2031. But the automotive number alone understates the actual EV-driven silver demand. Every EV fast charging station, the kind that delivers 250 to 350 kilowatts, contains between 1 and 2 kilograms of silver, primarily in its high current contacts and power management electronics. As public charging infrastructure scales, that demand vector adds another 8 to 12 million ounces a year. There's also a wild card. Samsung announced in 2025 that its next-generation all-solid-state lithium metal battery, which they're targeting for mass production by 2027, uses approximately 1 kilogram of silver per vehicle. That is roughly 32 troy ounces per car. If solid-state batteries scale at even 10% of new EV production by 2030, the silver demand from EVs alone could add 50 to 100 million ounces a year on top of current projections. Combined automotive plus charging plus the solid-state wildcard puts EV-driven silver demand in the range of 150 to 200 million ounces by 2030. Industry number 4, medical and antimicrobial silver. Silver has been used as an antimicrobial agent since before recorded history. The Romans stored water in silver vessels because they observed it stayed fresh longer. Hospitals have used silver-based wound dressings for over 100 years. In modern medicine, silver is used in 3 primary applications. Wound care dressings, where silver compounds prevent bacterial growth on burns and chronic wounds. Antimicrobial coatings, applied to hospital surfaces, surgical instruments, and increasingly to consumer products. and water purification, both at industrial scale and in residential filters. The estimates of total medical silver consumption vary by source. The widely cited figure is approximately 30 million ounces a year globally. The Silver Institute does not publish medical as a standalone category. It lives inside what they call other industrial. But most independent analysts converge somewhere in the 20 to 35 million ounce range. The growth driver is structural. Post-COVID, hospital infection control standards have tightened globally. Hospital-acquired infection, the medical term is MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, has driven adoption of silver-coated surfaces in operating rooms, ICUs, and increasingly in standard patient rooms. The wound care market alone is growing at approximately 6% a year. What makes medical silver structurally different from solar or electronics is this: there is no good substitute. Silver's antimicrobial property is a unique combination of broad-spectrum effectiveness and very low resistance development. Bacteria do not adapt to silver the way they adapt to antibiotics. By 2030, the conservative estimate is that medical silver demand reaches 40 to 50 million ounces a year. That is small compared to solar or electronics, but it is among the most price-inelastic demand on the entire silver curve. Industry number 5, military and defense applications. This is the demand category that most market analysts ignore entirely, and the one that may matter most strategically. According to CPM Group, and specifically Jeffrey Christian, who is the most credible independent analyst covering silver, global defense-related silver demand is approximately 50 million ounces a year. That figure includes silver azide compounds used in munitions primers, silver-based electronics in missile guidance systems and satellites, silver brazing in aerospace assembly, and silver in secure communications hardware. Two things changed in 2025 that make this category structurally more important. First, the United States Geological Survey added silver to the critical minerals list in 2025. For the first time. Critical mineral designation is the legal framework that triggers federal supply chain protection, and is the same framework that drove the Defense Production Act funding for lithium and rare earths. This is the federal government formally acknowledging that silver supply is a national security concern. Second, the U.S. strategic silver stockpile, which used to hold hundreds of millions of ounces, was effectively depleted in the 1990s, when Congress mandated the Department of Defense sell its silver holdings. The United States today has no significant strategic reserve of silver to draw down on if global supply tightens further. Defense demand is small in absolute tonnage compared to solar or electronics, but it is the most strategically important, because military procurement does not respond to price. If a guidance system needs silver, the Pentagon will pay. If a satellite needs silver-coated mirrors, the Department of Defense will source it. By 2030, with global defense spending rising and the AI-enabled defense build-out accelerating, military silver demand likely reaches 60 to 70 million ounces a year. Now let's do the math. Add up the 5 industries. Solar PV in 2025, approximately 180 million ounces. Solar PV in 2030, 322 to 450 million ounces. Electronics and AI infrastructure in 2025, 461 million ounces. In 2030, 550 to 650 million ounces. EVs plus charging in 2025, approximately 100 million ounces. In 2030, 150 to 200 million ounces. Medical antimicrobial, 30 in 2025, growing to 40 or 50 by 2030. Military and defense, 50 in 2025, 60 to 70 by 2030. Plus brazing alloys and solders, which are stable at around 55 million ounces, plus jewelry, plus photography, plus all the smaller categories. Total industrial silver demand by 2030, in the central case, reaches between 1.1 billion and 1.5 billion ounces a year. Now the supply side. Global silver mine production in 2025 was approximately 835 million ounces. With recycling, total supply reaches approximately 1.05 billion ounces. The Silver Institute does not project significant mine supply growth between now and 2030. Recycling can scale somewhat. End-of-life solar panels begin recycling in volume around 2028, but not fast enough to close a 400 to 500 million ounce structural gap. The Silver Institute itself, in its November 2025 forecast, projected that the cumulative deficit between 2021 and 2030 could exceed 1.5 billion ounces. For scale, Total above-ground deliverable silver, the inventory in LBMA-approved London vaults, on COMEX, in major ETFs, is approximately 1 to 1.3 billion ounces. The free float, meaning the portion available for industrial sourcing without dislocating ETF holdings, is approximately 155 million ounces. That is 60 to 70 days of global industrial consumption. If the demand projections are even directionally correct, the world runs out of mobile industrial silver inventory well before 2030. Here is the part most market commentary is missing. Silver is not running out. The Earth has plenty of silver. The issue is that the silver that is mineable economically, at current prices and current technology, is not enough to satisfy the 5 industries that need it right now, plus the growth projected through 2030. The 2 ways this math resolves are well documented historically. Either the price rises until industrial users find substitutes or accept lower margins, which means a structural revaluation, or supply expands, which requires either new primary silver mines, which take 5 to 10 years to permit and build, or unprecedented recycling rates, which the infrastructure is just beginning to scale. The Bank of America and Citi 12-month silver targets, released in early 2026, are between $200 and $300 per ounce. Those targets are not from precious metals bull marketers. They are from major bank commodity desks running the same supply-demand math we just covered. What's worth watching in the next 90 days? The Silver Institute's quarterly demand update, particularly the solar PV monthly numbers from China. Any sustained run above 20 million ounces a month of Chinese silver imports signals that solar demand is accelerating rather than thrifting away. The LBMA monthly vault report, whether London silver holdings continue declining. COMEX silver coverage ratio, currently at 15.4%. Any further decline takes us below the stress threshold. And U.S. federal supply chain announcements. Given silver's 2025 critical mineral designation, any Department of Defense procurement directive on silver would signal the federal level recognizing the supply constraint. The math problem is documented. The 5 industries are firing. The supply side is not responding. What happens between now and 2030 is, by the Silver Institute's own data, a question of which year the math breaks, not whether. If you found this useful, subscribe, and we'll keep tracking how it unfolds. We cover the data, the history, and the supply chains almost nobody else is connecting. See you in the next one.